Hi, welcome back to my course, General Science. And today, in this second episode, we're going to start diving into the first section of science we're going to cover in General Science, which is biology. And to start, I want to talk about what biology is and why it's important and why we study it. So, first, to kind of answer the question, what is biology? Well, biology is the study of life or living things. So that's what biology is all about, and that's pretty important considering we're living things and we live along other living things, and understanding how that works is pretty important stuff. So let's get started. So, like I said, why study biology? Well, it's pretty relevant to our everyday experience. Biology leads to medical advances. It addresses the needs of our growing population on our planet. It can help us fight the challenges of losing biodiversity. It helps us create better biotechnology, so like prosthetic limbs and pacemakers and new organs and stuff like that. And then also, biology has a pretty large impact on climate change. So that's one of the other major reasons we study biology, these days at least. Um, Biology also is controversial. Whenever you're dealing with um, living things or humans or anything like that, people can get offended. So, some examples of some controversial biology might be dealing with an endangered species. Some people don't seem to want those endangered species around anymore for some reason. I don't get it, but that's something that people have take issue with. Or using human fetal tissue has been a huge controversial issue in the last 2 decades. There's pretty promising outlooks for research if we use human fetal tissue, but where we're getting it from and how we use it is something that people don't really sit doesn't really sit well with some people. And then, of course, food safety, like GMOs or pesticides on our food, is something that biologists deal with, and it's also something that people have gotten up in arms about recently in the last few years as well. There's been a big movement against that. So that's another reason why we study biology, because it's controversial, but controversial things are worth studying. So, like I said, biology is the study of life, and it's one of the branches of science. And when we study science, we're really just trying to understand nature. That's what the scientific method is for. That's the method we talked about in the last episode. It's to understand things around us. Um, and so biology is really a human endeavor because we're trying to understand um, all of the living things in the world, including us. How do we work, and what do we do, and how do we interact with other living things and stuff like that. That's something that I think humans have been trying to figure out since we've ever been around. So it's something cool that we get to delve into. Why do we work the way we work? And that's something cool. So the first thing we really need to understand, though, before we talk about biology, then, is what is life? What is considered a living thing? And according to biology, these are the characteristics that you need to be considered living. You need to be highly organized and complex, which we certainly are. We're made up of trillions of cells. But even single cellular organisms can be highly organized and complex with their organelles and stuff like that. So single celled organisms can be considered life. You have to be composed of one or more cells. You have to contain a blueprint of your characteristics. For the living things on our planet, that would be DNA. Um, you have to acquire and use energy, so you can't be energyless. You can't not eat or consume energy in some way. And you have to be able to control and carry out numerous reactions. We do that on a daily basis. We're not aware of it, but our bodies are constantly doing chemical reactions. In fact, when you die, one of the signs that you're dead is those reactions have stopped. So the chemical reactions inside your body are what's keeping you alive right now. That's one of the things that makes us living. Living organisms also do some other things that are important characteristics of life. They grow. They maintain a constant internal environment, which is called homeostasis. So they keep their internal environment the same, or they try to the best they can. They can produce offspring. They respond to their environment, which we do, and they may evolve. We may change over time. And we, as a human species, have certainly changed over time. So that are some other characteristics of what life is. So, being a branch of science, which is what biology is, has two meanings. One, it means that it's both an activity, so you can do biology, you can go out and study things or run experiments or any of that, but it's also a body of knowledge. So you can go on the internet and type in biology and you can learn things about different living things, and that's the body of knowledge of biology. And it's a way of thinking about and understanding our world through a certain lens. We're looking through it to find out things about life. Other types of scientists do look at the world in a different way, but biologists look at it in the terms of life. There are several major themes in biology, right? Every branch of science has some themes that they kind of explore and look into. Biologies right now are evolution by natural selection, inheritance, which is genetics, cells, biological classification, so classifying the different living things into different groups, bioenergetics, which is about energy and biological energy, homeostasis, which I mentioned earlier, is keeping our internal environment the same, and ecosystems, so groups of living things living together and how they interact. Biology is, of course, studied through the scientific method, right? All science is. So they use the scientific method to answer questions about living things. So that's the major caveat for biology, is they use the scientific method to study things that are living. We already know all about that from our last one. Let's see here. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about each of the different things that biologists study a little bit, and then in the next episode we can start talking about some actual biology. Before after I explain what biology is. So what do biologists study? The first thing we talked about is evolution. So how do things change over time? Why do things change over time? Why do certain animals become the way they are? How do they get those traits? That's all about what evolutionary biologists study. It's the change of species over time. How did we get from single-celled life forms to us? People who are looking at cells, they want to know how they work, what they do, what are all the pieces and parts. It's kind of like a ginormous 3D jigsaw puzzle. That's what cell work is all about. Genetics, they were talking about heritable information, studying DNA, understanding the process that DNA goes through, how DNA creates proteins, and how those proteins do their job, and how they affect what makes up living things. That's what genetics is all about. They also study the structure and functions of different things. So, for example, like, what was the appendix for? We're still trying to figure that out. There's lots of different theories, but we don't actually know. So we're working on that one. That's one of the things that scientists are looking into. Why do we have an appendix if we don't use it currently? We also look at biologists also look at environmental interactions. So what happens when the environment changes, right? What if the forest dries out and dies? What happens to the animals in that forest? What happens if the desert all of a sudden becomes wet? And there's no longer a desert there, but it's a rainy plains. Does that change what happens to the animals? It could even be smaller things, but those are the things that we talk about within the environment. We said that living things have to respond to their environments, so we also like to know what happens when they learn new things or they have to change what they're doing because of their environment has changed or there's something new that's happened. They need to be able to figure out what to do. So that's something that biologists look into. They compare and contrast the three major groups of life, that being animals, plants, and bacteria. You can throw fungi in there too, I guess, as a fourth one, but those are the three major ones. And then, of course, they also look into Um, hold on one second. Lost my train of thought. Um, Ecosystems. So, or not ecosystems, sorry, bioenergetics. So how do we turn, how does life work with energy? So how do living things process and use energy? But also, how can we make better renewable resources like biofuel and stuff like that? That's all something that biologists would do, and they might work with other scientists on that, but biologists have a hand in that as well. Um, Anyways, thanks for watching. That's all about biology, our first branch of science we're going to dive into. Next episode, we're going to start talking about cells and explore what cells are made of and what they do and how they work. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.